Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maker Monday, a live Q&A session for all Mendix developers and everyone who's interested in low-code or the low-code platform. My name is Vries, and I'm the community manager here at Mendix. And it is my pleasure to host this session with a couple of experts from Mendix and our community. So the first guest I'd like to introduce is Iain Lindsay, a technical director at AuraQ. Iain, welcome to the session.
Hey, Ian. Good to see you. Hi, everybody.
Good to see you too. Hey, and we have another Mendix MVP, which is Mohammed Siddiqui, also from AuraQ, principal engineer at AuraQ. Mo, welcome to the session. I see you're muted.
Hi, Ian. Nice to see you. Hi, everyone.
Great. Welcome to the session. And our third guest for today is Jakob Schillinger, and he is an industrial expert who came from Mendix, came from Siemens, and has joined Mendix a couple of years ago, and is now all into the low-code world. So, Jakob, welcome to the session.
Hi, everyone. Jan, thanks for having me today.
Now, before we get into the questions themselves, I have a couple of questions, actually. So I'd love to get to know a little bit more about the people here in the room, in the virtual room. So let's start with Iain. Iain, you're a technical director at AuraQ. Now, you have 8 years experience with the Mendix platform, I believe. You know, we call it low code nowadays, but yeah, back then it wasn't called low code. How did you get into Mendix and into this line of work?
So I've always been, or for quite a long time, been involved in professional services and consultancy. And prior to getting involved with Mendix, I worked for 2 business process management vendors in MetaStorm and OpenText. And when I left OpenText and joined AuraQ, AuraQ was still a partner, a BPM kind of delivery partner for OpenText, but they were looking to diversify beyond BPM, and we looked around, and actually Mendix was just a natural progression, really, from the types of services that we were delivering to our customers, and we saw it as actually the next step, kind of beyond business process management. So that's kind of like where we started, really.
Very interesting. Yeah. So, and Mohammed, you're Iain's colleague. How long have you been with AuraQ, and how long have you been working with Mendix? Did Iain pull you into this, or how did that work?
Oh, so I have been with AuraQ, I think it's been more than 5.5 years now, Iain, isn't it? It's been a long time now. And I think I was working in Mendix or with Mendix before joining AuraQ as well. So I was working with an insurance company called Liverpool Victoria before that. So actually, I mean, I did come to know Mendix from a different point of view. Like when I was doing my master's back in 2010, that's how I came to know Mendix from one of my tutorial. I mean, from one of my tutor and all those stuff. So as a module in my master's, and that's how I came to know Mendix. I started learning it. I did my dissertation on that, and well, I use Mendix as a utility tool to build up rapidly, and how quickly we can turn around the apps. But unfortunately, I did start with a traditional developer, .NET developer role when I actually started my career back in 2010, 11, and then I was so frustrated when I actually started doing stuff. I knew Mendix, I know .NET, and I was like, wait, it's taking me 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks to build something in a couple of hours or a day maximum. And that taught me to just okay, let's take a step back. And then I started to okay, I'll quit this. And then I started to look into Mendix jobs, and I mean, luckily I got an LV, and that's how I started using Mendix.
That's quite incredible, because I think you said you started with Mendix originally, was it 10 years ago or in 2010?
2010, yeah. It was the first version that I started using was version 2.5.1, I remember.
I think you've out dinosaured me here, Mo, because I don't even know that version anymore. That's incredible. You must have been one of the first to adopt the Mendix platform so early on.
Yeah, I think it's been grown since then. I mean, it's been just growing and growing, and I've seen like so many different things. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, still now I still love it and keep enjoying doing it.
Perfect. So of course, Jakob, we're really curious about your story because Iain's from a BPM background. Mo was just talking about .NET and things like that. What's your background? Industrial something. What is it?
So I call myself a Mendix evangelist today, but I learned something proper. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have always been pretty close to like digitalization on the shop floor and around the shop floor. So I worked in services and pre-sales for Siemens as a Plm software provider or product lifecycle management software provider. I also worked for a German ERP company for quite some time in pre-sales, and then went back to Siemens to work in pre-sales. And I'm the greenhorn here. I started using Mendix in 2018 on the day that Siemens acquired Mendix to enhance its digital portfolio. And back in the days in 2018, I was looking for something to bridge different software areas like ERP, PLM, and manufacturing execution software. And for me as a mechanical engineer, bridging that was pretty hard, and even more so building value-add specific applications. And I was pretty desperate because not being able to do that didn't help me in my job. And then the Mendix acquisition was basically pronounced by Siemens. I gave Mendix a look and was like, this is exactly what I need. I can now access core systems, work with the data, exchanges with other core systems. And on top of that, I can build applications that are process specific. Yeah, and a couple of hours later, after the basic training in Mendix, I had my first app up and running that connected to a shop floor planning and scheduling app. And yeah, from there on, I kept close to what Mendix is doing in Siemens, and I'm now part of the Mendix organization.
Wow, that's a really interesting journey. So especially the mechanical engineering part, because you said you built your first app after just getting to know Mendix after a couple of hours. How much experience did you have with development, building applications, and things like that?
Building applications, barely none. So I always worked with like digital solution in the manufacturing and the production space. So I was close to software and was working with software all the time. I also could do some flow programming. So if then else or switch case, stuff like that, to like interact with functions of an existing application. I always tried to write my own applications, but I never could prioritize that over my regular duties at work or in my life, because like learning how to program apps is a commitment. And so I had some basic knowledge about how domain models look like, how computers think in the terms of processes, but like learning the SDKs, the frameworks to like get an app running, that was beyond my skills. And because Mendix standardizes so much and provides the full platform experience to prototype, develop, and deploy, it took away so much of the things that drag you down if you want to learn, that it took me a couple of hours to like take what I knew so far and apply that into an application.
So what made you go and jump into Mendix and think, hey, this is interesting, I can work with this?
So first it was me learning in a couple of hours how to access an existing application for advanced planning and scheduling and do something with that, like sending new failures to that existing application with a very convenient hybrid mobile application, and like interfacing between applications way beyond my skill levels up to then. And then,
or what at least what you had in mind, what you would need to know to build that.
Exactly. So, I mean, naturally, I do understand how programs communicate with each other, but having a rough understanding of things and then like code it or learning a framework that helps you with it is a different thing. And then if you have other tasks at work as well, that you can't concentrate on all the coding part. So, and that gave me quite an edge. And then suddenly things happened around me with Mendix. So I was known to be the Mendix guy after a couple of days, and then my former manager called me because he was going into a sales situation with a larger customer, whom he wanted to sell a larger Teamcenter product lifecycle management installation to. And he said, we can do everything they want, but we are missing this and that function. And they are rather specific on how they want that function to look like. Can you possibly build me an application that does that for me so I can just show them how we could do it, even though we can't do it at the moment? And I was like, yeah, sure. My plane is late at the airport right now. And I took like a delay of 1.5 hours to create an application that exactly looked like the PowerPoint slides the customer had set up, how he wanted it to look like. Send it over. No, I didn't send it over. Deployed it to the cloud. And he had it at the ready to test it while I was on the plane. When I came back off the plane, I made some final adjustments based on his feedback. And that's powerful. And it totally turned around the situation.
How did they respond when you shared that? Did they believe you, or did they think it was a gimmick, or
the customer or my ex-manager?
Both.
So my ex-manager was up and off because he saw something on his screen he could work with that was functional. It was not just a mock-up, it was working. And the customer easily understood that this was not part of the initial PLM offering they were getting, but they also understood that after focusing on PLM implementation, they would have a tool from the same vendor at the ready to like connect to the standard PLM backbone and then build specific applications on top that took their engineering and their service feedback processes into account, and not a generic process that is often implemented in core systems.
Excellent. Now, just a note for the audience, if you have any questions for us about getting started with Mendix, where you can find resources, or if you have any specific technical questions, please let us know in the Q&A, and then we can open up the conversation and see how expertly our experts really are, and see if we can challenge them a little bit. So Iain, Jakob was talking about integrations with PLM software and things like that. What is that like in your world where you're implementing Mendix? What kind of customers and industries are you working in and applying Mendix in?
I mean, we work cross-vertical. So at the moment, I think we're working in insurance, legal, food and bev, and we've got a couple of financial services customers as well. But we can go into any industry really, and we can quickly understand kind of what the problems that those industries are facing, and then kind of suggest a solution to kind of address those really with the Mendix platform. And the benefit is just being able to kind of deliver that value really, really quickly. Even in the kind of older days of BPM, we were able to kind of deliver sort of process-based applications quite quickly, very visual, very model-driven as well, with the modeling your process diagram and then taking that through to execution. And Mendix is very, very similar to that. So, but the speed of delivery is so fast, you're able to kind of deliver value really, really quickly. And being able to do that via this rapid iteration very, very closely with the business. That's really kind of what is sort of stand out really. We can deliver value to the business in front of them, and they see it, like Jakob said, like before their very eyes. They see the value being added almost on a daily basis. It's a really, really compelling situation where you're able to kind of take quite substantial changes to the business kind of after a matter of days.
And Mohammed, coming from a more developer background and programming background, Mendix is a low-code platform, so it's not necessarily no code where you don't see any coding or any programming at all. What is it like for you? How much coding versus programming and drag and dropping are you doing? Like, how much do you still get to work with actual code?
I think that's a good question, because I think in terms of actually coding, I would say I hardly do that now. I think it's more drag and dropping, using the resources from the App Store, getting that reusable modules out, and all those kind of stuff. So I think more. I mean, if you ask about the percentage, I would say then it's like 90 to 95%. I still like do drag and dropping. And that's I mean, even if you're talking about our complex solutions, most of the stuff is there, either on the App Store, or you can think of a solution and can create something without coding things. But still that 5 to 10% of the bracket where you can still code, that's about, if there is a very, very specific requirement from any customer about adding building a custom widget that, on the client side, or some Java integrations, or some Java kind of like coding that is required in order to optimize it a bit further and have it more custom solution. Those kind of things are very rare, but yeah, that's still possible to do, which is nice to have. But on the day-to-day life, no, it's more kind of drag and drop.
Excellent. Now, there is actually a question here that came in, and I'll read out the question, and let's see who could dive in on this one. So the question is, what are the options for reflecting data in a single table from a core system in multiple Mendix apps with search functionalities and the ability to edit the records in any of the Mendix apps? So let's assume the table is huge and it holds millions of records. Who has experience with this, and who would like to take a shot at this?
So, yeah, we've done this on a number of occasions, actually. So that there are a number of options available to you. So the integration capabilities in Mendix are really powerful. So whether you've got you're trying to consume data via OData or REST or SOAP-based services, or whether there's a database connection into that repository, there are components available that would allow you to kind of access that data, really, as long as there's an interface into the system that you're trying to access the data from. Mendix have just released the Data Hub as well, that would allow you to kind of surface data from lots of kind of back-end systems through into a series of all of your Mendix applications. So what we've done in the past is it kind of depends on how you're accessing that data, how often you need to kind of access that data, how often that data changes, and then you would really come up with a particular strategy for kind of how you'd access it, whether it's something that you'd kind of synchronize on a regular basis and effectively hold a cache on your Mendix repository, or whether you'd actually make a call out on demand to kind of bring that data back. So there are a huge number of options available to you. Kind of probably need to understand the use case in a bit more detail to kind of suggest the most appropriate method.
Yeah, great answer. And if you have any follow-up questions on Iain's answer, please let us know, because I think these are exactly the kind of questions that we want to answer. I actually have a follow-up question on this, Iain. So when you deploy a Mendix app, by default, Mendix uses a Mendix database, right? How does it work when in this situation where we're talking about millions of records? Where would you store that? Would you use a Mendix database? Can you use your own database? How would you determine where you store your data?
I mean, again, it depends on kind of how you're going to be using that data. So you can absolutely store that data within the Mendix repository. Depends how much of it you need to use within the applications themselves. It may just be that you bring in a subset of that data just for the purposes of the application that you're building. So you can absolutely have that within a Mendix repository. We've got some Mendix applications that are dealing with millions of records of data, but equally we're also kind of integrating to to systems such as SAP that hold kind of millions of data records, and we just kind of pull in the data as and when it's needed.
Right. Yeah. So follow up here. The data is changes only once a day. Is it fine to replicate such huge data, especially if you have security constraints on it?
And what's the data going to be used for? So is it
back to the main question?
Yeah. That is the key question, I think. Kind of why do you need that data? What are you going to be doing with it within the application?
Yeah. So does frequency play a role in this, whether you use it once a day or a couple times an hour, or?
Well, I think if you're only doing it, if your interaction with that data is quite small, then actually just kind of making on-demand calls out to that kind of back-end repositories is probably okay. But if you're having to do lots and lots of kind of operations over that data, or maybe you need to kind of enrich it in some way kind of within that Mendix application for use within the Mendix app, then actually there is an argument to kind of replicate some of that and store a local cache.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So we have another question. This one is about XPath. Now I see a huge wall of code pasted in the Q&A. I won't read the code, the actual code, but the question is, it's sort of more of a case here. I'm using a big XPath, so domain model and access rules in my application in order to filter some rules, and it's causing performance issues. So is there a way that I can improve the performance? I tried indexing. Here is the XPath below. So yeah, maybe I can give you a second to take a look at the XPath. So who has the most experience with XPath in this setting? Is that you, Mo, or?
I guess both of us have been working with XPath. If you correct me if I'm wrong.
You have to use XPath quite a lot within Mendix. So yeah, we've both got a lot of experience with it.
But yeah, I think in terms of performance issues, usually you hit performance issues if you have like a very big XPath on the domain model or something. I haven't seen the XPath yet, what is there on the Q&A, but roughly, I mean, speaking, you have to optimize your XPath, by making sure you're not retrieving that same association or things again and again, because there are some best practices already available on the Mendix documentation, where you can make sure the XPath, you retrieve it once and then you kind of like go into the cascade of comparing things and stuff like that, or restricting things. So again, first thing is make sure you kind of have that in a very concise and good way, where you're not kind of retrieving things again and again. Then I guess it's a matter of like looking into your XPath and kind of like doing iterative process of how things, I mean, just changing a couple of things. Maybe sometimes you have to go through like multiple deep associations to get to one of the kind of just say if you want to retrieve it's yes or no, you have to go down like say 5 different associations. So that might be quite heavy on the system. So it might be best to you could just create that attribute on the main entity itself, and while you process or while you create that object, you just have that set in the first place, so that you don't have to go down that deep level of associations to just check one thing. So I think that would be another solution that would kind of reduce your performance, because you're straight away checking against your main core entity model or on the entity.
And it's hard to kind of make some suggestions immediately without a bit more context on that XPath. Yeah. But I would say that there does look to be a bit of duplication in there. So I think there's probably scope to kind of reduce the number of paths that need to be defined. But like I say, it's kind of very hard to look at that just in isolation without the wider context.
Correct. Yeah. So follow-up question. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. I would say, like, I mean, as Iain mentioned here, I didn't see it, but if you have seen and saw duplications already, then there you go. That's your first place to go where you remove those duplications by following the Mendix best practices and making sure that would already give you some more performance in terms of making it nicer.
Right, right. Yeah, so on our academy at learn.mendix.com, we have 3 learning paths that are all about XPath, and that's where you can learn the best practices as well. So how do you optimize your queries? How do you think about your data structure? Like if you need something all the time, do you need to, go several steps deep and retrieve everything, which will slow things down, or can you optimize it for proper use? Yeah, so there is a bit of a follow-up question here as well by Abdullah. He's asking, what if you optimize the XPath, but the data keeps growing? So what do you do about it when it's too big? Do you archive? What if the customer needs some of that data or the records on the same grid? How would you solve for that?
Well, I mean, I think if you need access to the data, then you've kind of answered your own question that you wouldn't want to archive that. But I think, yeah, if there is data that is no longer needed, so maybe you've got some sort of records management policy in place for the application. So yeah, there is absolutely an argument there to kind of archive that off and keep the Mendix repositories kind of as lean as possible.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we did have some of the issues with our customers where there's like millions of records in the table, and we can't just display everything because of the in any application. If you want to do that, it's going to cause issues. So I mean, not only Mendix, but wherever you do that, it's going to be very heavy. So what other thing would you could do is maybe have a filter approach where you have a custom filter, and then you just go from date and to date, and then you just fetch back those records of what you actually need and you're looking for, rather than just showing all the millions of records there.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, and what I would also recommend is visiting the Mendix forum, so forum.mendix.com, where you can post this question. So experts like Iain and Mo and Jakob are on there every day and helping out people like you with questions like this. So it's also a place where you can add more context, like what are you trying to do? What does your domain model look like? And then we can go and help you very specifically and answer your question there as well. Now, this is a good question, and I'm going to ask it to you, Jakob. What do you think is the greatest limitation that you feel you might run into when building applications in Mendix? And how do you work around, or how do you work through those limitations? So what have you?
I do think there are two views on the question, on the answer. One is purely technical, and the other one is more like from a capability of the programming team side of things. And let's start with that one, because that's the first one you have to solve. What I'm at the moment, I'm helping Siemens to adopt Mendix at scale. We built like more than 120 applications within Siemens. So this happened to us a couple of times. People like hitting a wall, even with Mendix, or even like going live with an application and then something didn't work properly in the application when it was released to the people. And what is important to understand in Mendix is that the proposition of Mendix, making coding very easy and accessible for a lot of people, doesn't mean you turn into a professional full stack developer overnight. There are still boundaries what you can achieve with Mendix. And there's a learning curve, even though it looks much different than a learning curve in high coding. And it is important to understand that and respect that, and also to manage expectations with your management when you want to create applications. So what we do in Siemens a lot is we try to assess what kind of applications are a fit for the capabilities of the team who's going to build them. We call doing that a portfolio workshop, where we sit down with a team of people that want to create applications and think about possible applications we could build. And then we try to locate applications that have a low to medium complexity only. So we don't try to start with the most complex applications. And we combine that with looking at what kind of value do those applications deliver, what kind of visibility do they create, to give us a chance to to take low to medium complexity applications that deliver value, start developing with them, because it's easier to achieve goals with them and deploy them later on, and then use the perceived value, the visibility, to get management buy-in and further funding to grow skills and grow capabilities. And that allows people to grow their capabilities themselves, to get extra support in, and we're slowly increasing that so we can tackle more complex applications later on. On a technical side, I think it really depends on who you are. For me, as a mechanical engineer, I hit the wall the first time within Mendix with Microflows. It took me quite some time to transfer what I didn't know about if then else and switch case to Microflows. But I jumped over that over time. But a lot of people, even especially those who want to do rapid application developer certification, they have high challenges with Microflows. And here's a recommendation from me: if you wanna understand Mendix in its core, and you want to do that with a rapid application developer training, you can skip Microflow. You can still do a lot of great stuff with Mendix. And when you build up some confidence and some capabilities, just go back to the Microflow chapter then and work on that before you do certification. That's my view from the mechanical engineer. Mo, Iain, you might have other views on what is challenging in Mendix, even in Mendix.
So first of all, I want to thank Christopher for asking that question. And just to go into a little bit more specifics, can you tell us if there's anything on your mind that you might think are limitations for you specifically? In the meantime, Iain, Mo, go.
I appreciate this is probably going to sound a little bit like an interview question, like what's your greatest weakness? But the thing that was always a huge limitation for me was the inability to model a process, an end-to-end process within the platform, and all of the benefits that you got from that. I think when we're talking to a lot of customers, they do want to see kind of like a visual representation of their kind of end-to-end kind of business process, which to date has obviously been quite difficult to do within Mendix. And the reason why this sounds like a kind of what's your greatest weakness question is because obviously with version 9, we are getting that workflow modeling capability. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, sort of coming from that BPM background, is not having that capability within the platform. So I'm really excited actually that it is being introduced from the next version.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So Mo, if I'd had to ask you, what are some of the initial limitations that you were either worried about or ran into when you first started using Mendix? And have you found other ways of doing that, or have you found solutions?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, when you're talking like 10 years ago, there were many. I mean, they were like at every step I would hit a wall, and then I had to do some kind of workarounds, either in terms of building a Java action to do some stuff, or doing a custom widget or something else within Mendix itself. But I think now, as Iain mentioned, majority of the time we had to do case management or workflows for our customers, and that was pretty kind of like too much workaround that we had to do in terms of getting things out and getting the flow working and stuff. But I guess I'm really equally excited as Iain to see the workflow kind of getting launched in Mendix 9, as well as the other challenges where with I think late version 8s and Mendix 9 as well, you're gonna get performance bot, which is gonna be very useful, because that was a bit of challenge in early days, I guess, especially with people you're working with a team of like say 5-6 people, and then everyone has their own kind of things that they do, and you set your standards, but still, I mean, if there is a bot in the system, which will in the modular or Studio Pro, where we know that that's going to suggest us and say that, okay, well, this is not the best practice, or this is the best practice, that's kind of like stuff that's really kind of great as well. That's I'm looking forward to.
Now I have a question here from Abdullah, actually, and he's asking, as a bit of a non-technical person, a non-technical question, how do you control what citizen developers' impact on advanced functionalities? And it's easy for a person with a limited technical background to create bugs and reviewing everything developed by citizen developers. It sort of defeats the purpose because it's extra work. So Jakob, do you have any experience with involving non-technical people or less technical people into a project, and what is the best way to do that?
I would answer the app factory concept. That is a framework to scale how you operate with Mendix, and at the same time a framework to govern how you scale with citizen developers. And again, it's important to understand how experienced people are you're working with, especially citizen developers, and know limitations they have and build apps according to those limitations. And if there's still a gap between capabilities in your team and the features you want to implement, and let's say they are advanced, then get external support in to like help with UX and UI or architecture or security and compliance. Those are usually the topics we see in Siemens where we have to guide citizen developers more. And at the same time, create understanding in citizen developers why it is important to raise a hand when topics that need guidance are beyond skill capabilities with a citizen developer. And based on that and a mutual understanding that sometimes IT stuff is a bit more complex than just clicking an app together, helps a lot. And that's something the App Factory governs very well. Again, it's very important if you want to use an App Factory to know what kind of portfolio you wanna build and what kind of capabilities you have, because like getting external support in it's something that needs to be paid for. So it's important to understand of what value you're gonna generate. And after that, it's working with people. But that's what Mendix is so great in, like getting people on board. Turn people who are just impacted into people who can have an impact, and it's much easier to build a common ground between IT professionals and citizen developers based on that.
Very good, yeah. And Iain, Mo, what is your experience with involving business-oriented people or analysts or non-developers into projects? What kind of role do they have, and how does that work out in reality when you're working on these sprints and developing solutions?
I mean, we encourage it as much as possible. I think the more people that can get involved, the better, really. But it obviously needs to be managed. It can't just be an absolute free-for-all. But I think there is, so we do try and incorporate time within a project to kind of provide that kind of on-the-job sort of mentoring and knowledge transfer. The training is absolutely fantastic for Mendix, but you are not going to learn as much as you will actually building out applications. And I think if our customers, if you can build it out with experienced people, so whether that's other experienced people within an organization or via a partner or somebody or Mendix themselves, I think you're going to gain so much. So I was quite lucky. The very first project that I delivered, I was working alongside somebody from Mendix Expert Services, and after that kind of 8-week MVP build, just having the ability to kind of spend so much time with somebody with so much knowledge, I think was invaluable, really. So we tried to kind of incorporate kind of more junior people into the build process, so that they can kind of pick up those skills. And for our customers, there's an added benefit that obviously they're not reliant on us like longer term. So that kind of reduces their cost of ownership, and because they can start to kind of build that internal capability, which I think is really important if an organization wants to scale the number of Mendix apps that they've got internally.
Yeah. So you're also helping the customer build their own capability themselves and making sure that they can do at least parts of the maintenance or updating of their applications. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Mo, yeah, same question. Like, what's your experience with citizen developers? We call it citizen developers nowadays, but of course, these people have been around for a long time. People with ideas who may have technical know-how, but aren't really doing the development themselves. How do you work with these people?
I think, as Iain mentioned, it's until you do something, you won't learn. So that's how I completely agree with that. And with the day-to-day, working with citizen developers and also, mentoring them, training them, and making them, making them more kind of like inclusive within the development, and they own the ownership of whatever they are doing. So I guess one of the approach that we take is about, building the reusable components and the starter pack for the companies, so that the technical things like single sign-on and all those other other details are already in there when they start a new app. All they need to do is just focus on the business requirements. And again, we do define set of practices for the citizen developers, and while we train them and mentor them, and then everybody is on board with those best practices. Although Mendix has got lots of documentations, best practices and everything, we still you make sure everything is being followed. And then I think that would reduce the risk a little bit of one, not building things in a very different ways, and two, they know they have the technical things sorted out for them, which is very advanced. But then on the other hand, they know that they can go and drag and drop and build beautiful apps themselves.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of things: controlling access to projects, but also creating pre-built components that they can use out of the box without having to explore everything themselves and potentially using things that they're not supposed to be using. So control and guidance, basically. So it's not like any random person can go off and do something in the projects. It is, if someone wants access, it goes through you, and you determine how far, how much, and in what way.
Yep.
I don't necessarily think that a review defeats the purpose of kind of having those people involved in the development process. I think it's just another aspect of that collaborative approach that you take with Mendix development. We're all learning all the time, right? And I think just having your peers able to kind of review and give feedback, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Christopher here is asking another question. Our team is currently exploring and building more custom widgets, especially the newer pluggable widgets. What resources and tools do you use to build these custom widgets beyond the ones that Mendix has already provided? Now, Jakob, I know you're just getting started with Mendix. I don't know have you dabbled with custom widgets yet?
No, actually not. I didn't build widgets. I built a few templates and like starter apps around certain topics and released them to the Mendix marketplace for others to reuse. But programming widgets is nothing I tried out so far. I would love to, but no.
So you haven't built them yourself, but have you used other people's widgets or pluggable widgets?
I use them. I use them all the time. And again, this was also something that made Mendix resonate with me quite a lot, was something as easy as dragging a maps widget in, or and suddenly like interact with a map service out there beyond my skill levels, before that, and having a graphical representation of that. That was one of the big aha moments I had when trying out Mendix, or everything that connects to your smartphone, like the geolocation widget or camera widgets, that because Mendix has that mobile first strategy. It is so deeply rooted into the functionalities to enable like the camera or the camera roll of your mobile application. That's something I use a lot. For all parents out there, you can look like a super pro developer in front of your kids if you do that by just using the camera widget and then show your kid how they can take a picture in their own app. It's like magic for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, Mendix widgets and custom widgets, they're built using JavaScript. So I'm going to look look at Mo here. Mo, I'm pretty sure you've got a lot of experience with widgets and custom content, custom functionality. So whenever out of the box functionality in the platform is not enough and you want more, what do you do? How do you go to the marketplace and find a widget that suits your needs? And what do you do if you can't find one? Do you build your own?
Yeah, so first thing is, yes, go to the marketplace, try to find something, at least something similar, if not exactly 100% that matches our requirements. And then you can, either take that and fork that widget and kind of like build based on your requirements and customize it. So you can use different tools, to have that kind of things sorted by using JavaScript and all those, having a pluggable widget done. So yes, we do, look into the marketplace first, and if not, we can't find it, then we go and create some custom widgets which are suitable for our needs. And yeah, I think in terms of, different the widgets now, they are pluggable widgets. There are other widgets which I guess it's just kind of like what you need. If that matches your requirement, then you can just use that from the marketplace. If not, then if that's something similar, take that and make it do how you want to.
And what are the different types of widgets? Because we're talking about normal widgets, pluggable widgets. What is the difference?
Well, I think with Mendix latest versions, they have been released. The new framework for developing widget is pluggable widgets, and initially it was Dojo, and using that framework. So it's kind of like and then with those latest pluggable widgets, you could kind of use that with the latest version, and they are compatible. I think all the new widgets that are built are built with pluggable widgets, I guess. And again, correct me if I'm wrong in there, if you want to add more details on that.
And then where can you get started when you want to start developing your own widgets? Do we have any resources for that, or what is your go-to place?
When I'm doing it, I'll just look at another GitHub repository for a widget that and just look to see how they've implemented it, and then just copy
good
the
old
bits out
copy
that
paste.
I need. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. That's what everybody does, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and there are actually also courses and some how-tos on the Mendix documentation, so docs.mendix.com and learn.mendix.com. At least you'll get the basics of extending your applications with your own custom content. So that's a really important place to look. By the way, if you want to continue the conversation after this session, and if you have more questions or if you want to talk to someone one-on-one, you can join our community Slack channel. I've posted the link in the chat. You can create a free account, and there's already more than 3,000 Mendix developers on there. So yeah, join the conversation, and let's talk there. And we do have more questions. So Salam Al-Hakami is asking, hi guys, can we host Node.js apps on Mendix? In other words, can we use web3.js on Mendix? So it's again a JavaScript question. How do we integrate other frameworks or other JavaScript functionality into Mendix? How would you do that? Would you even do that?
So you can't run Node.js alongside Mendix, not in the Mendix cloud. If you're running on a private cloud or on premise, then you obviously can just have kind of Node running alongside and then just connect to it via an API. But if you're going into the Mendix cloud, no, there's no option currently to run Node.js. But, yeah, but if you do find another JavaScript library that you want to utilize to kind of wrap a widget around, then obviously you've got the ability to do that using the kind of pluggable widget framework.
Yes, I guess I'd ask a question back to you, Salam Al-Hakami. What is the use case for you? Why do you want to use web3.js, and what are you trying to solve? Because perhaps there are other options here as well to solve for that problem. So let's see. Abdullah has another question. What capabilities in native apps are you eagerly waiting for in future Studio Pro releases? So we know Mendix 9 is coming out soon. Jakob, what are you excited about in terms of Mendix 9 and anything related to native apps?
Well, I'm eagerly awaiting the capability to include public key infrastructure into native applications for mobile authentication inside Siemens. The whole security topic is always quite crucial at Siemens, especially for mobile applications. And like having that at your fingertip in a widgetized format, that's something I'm waiting for.
Excellent. Yeah. What about you, Iain, Mo?
It's boring answer, sorry, but single sign-on via native mobile. So
Same.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. So Mendix 9 right now is in beta, but is coming out soon. So keep an eye on that. Yeah, obviously we're going to be talking a lot more about Mendix 9, the new features coming up as Iain already mentioned before, workflow. We now have a complete new workflow engine being released with Mendix 9. So make sure you keep an eye on that. I'd be really interested in what kind of business cases you're trying to solve right now, and if workflow might be the answer to that. So let us know if you're working with that. Christopher has another comment here. He's talking directly to Iain, so we're having a one-on-one right now. He says, I'm currently working on an autocomplete widget to take over AuraQ's position. So the widget has seen a lot of use by us, but we've had a few issues with it over the time. So I'm wondering where you started when making that widget.
Yeah, so I haven't had much time recently to kind of keep up to date with all the latest Mendix releases. I was kind of waiting for the ability to rewrite it using React with the Plugable framework, but there are still a couple of limitations that there are features that are available in the old kind of digit way of building widgets that are not available at the moment via Plugable Widgets, which is kind of why it's sort of on hold. So you're more than welcome to take over, actually. I mean, it's open source. You can fork it and then create your own version. It'd be interesting to know like what sort of issues you faced, because I do need to find some time over the next couple of weeks to kind of update that until the kind of Plugable Widget support allows me to kind of rewrite it. So where I started, exactly what I said, actually, I just took another widget that was available via the Mendix GitHub, one of their GitHub repositories, downloaded the source code, had a poke around, and then based a new widget, kind of like using some of the approaches that they'd taken in that other widget, really. And then I've just built it and adapted it over time. Perfect.
And I'm just following up on Salam's question, where he talked about using a Web3.js, and he's saying, I'm building a blockchain app. So Salam, if you can tell us more about the app or what you're trying to do, then perhaps maybe we can answer your question on the forum if you post some details about what you're trying to do, and we can follow up there. There's another question here from Horace Tang. What are your views of Mendix Cloud versus Mendix versus private cloud or on-premises? Given the service-side restrictions, would you say, whoop, question's going up. I see upvotes going. Given the service-side restrictions, would you say Mendix Cloud is for simple apps? Or how do you go about choosing which infrastructure to use for your projects? I don't know if you want to take a stab at this, Iain, or.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that the Mendix Cloud is for simple apps. So you can run very complicated apps, but there are obviously some compromises if you deploy into the Mendix Cloud. But there are some benefits as well, and the major one is that you don't have as much kind of operational overhead as you would if you were kind of running a private cloud or even on premise. So we've got customers that are running every single flavor, really, and a lot of that comes down to kind of what their corporate standard is. So it's that decision is normally out of our hands. We just kind of do what we're asked. I think there are some benefits of going to the Mendix public cloud, but yeah, you do need to appreciate that there are a couple of limitations. You don't have access to the server infrastructure that those apps are deployed on, other than what's available via the cloud portal.
So on a bit of a different level, how much control or how much is decided by you and your development team versus what a customer decides? How do those conversations normally go? Because you said, it's up to the customer who decides what cloud's being used. What does that depend on, and how much say do you have over that?
So we would just have it's just a sort of consulting exercise, really. So we would kind of advise on the pros and cons of each of the approaches, and then based on kind of what we understand they need as well, from the applications that are being developed, and then they would kind of make a decision accordingly. We do try to steer them down the Mendix cloud route if we can, at least in the short term, just because getting that we have hit issues with being blocked by dependencies on kind of internal IT resources to get access to private cloud or even to on-premise, and going into the Mendix cloud does take away all those dependencies. So there are some benefits there if you are looking to start quickly.
I think it also depends a little bit how fast you want to visualize value when making the decision for Mendix, and you need to make the decision where to deploy. I was pretty close to the sales go-to-market with Mendix for quite some time, especially in Germany. A lot of customer opted for on-premise by default, just because they wanted to host everything. And as Iain said, that costs you time. And sometimes if you want to get people on board and create traction with your adoption journey and your success story, then speed is crucial. And then maybe taking a somewhat less complex application and somewhat less critical application and deploying that on the Mendix cloud can give you a huge time benefit to create awareness in the organization around you. That's also something to consider, besides all security and compliance regulations that might drive your initial decision which environment to use.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to stick with you, Jakob, because important question here from Bjorn Moldak. He's asking, what is the best way to learn all about working with Microflows? I already did some of the learning paths. So how did you get into Microflows, and how did you learn about it?
Well, first I also went to the Rapid Application Development course and learned the basics in here. I must admit, then I forgot about Microflows a little bit and focused more on the UI UX parts of Mendix, because that was more important in my pre-sales role back then. And I actually learned about Microflows more by reaching out to colleagues who had built more substantial applications that had more specific processes, more data in them, and just went on their nerves and asked, how does this work and that work? And that was quite successful for me, because I just had to look at all examples, or even just Microflows they sent over to me to look at how they did things. And then I basically stepped on their backs to learn more. And that's an approach we are, for example, also utilizing at Siemens to grow people capabilities. We call that co-creation. We have 13 app factories in Siemens right now, and some of them offer internships. So wherever you are in Siemens, you can, and how senior or junior you are, you can apply for an internship in an existing app factory. Just create with them for 3 months, learn from others how to work with Mendix, and then you go back to your business unit and start your Mendix success journey there. And that's what I always have been heavily using, like asking people, reaching out to people. Because that's what Mendix is so great at, connecting people. I mean, Iain, Mo, and I, we could start working on a project tomorrow, even though we have somewhat different backgrounds and can answer somewhat different questions. Still would work, and you need to leverage that when you go with Mendix. Just ask people; they're always happy to help.
Fantastic. That's really good advice. So we have time for one more question by Abdullah. Is there a way to control session timeout for a certain group of users of your app while other users have no timeout or longer periods? I see Mo laughing, so this one's yours, Mo. It sounds like you've had this question before.
Opportunity for a shameless plug for Mo and one of his modules on the App Store.
Hey.
Yeah. That's correct. Well, I think I had this question from many customers, and that's when I decided to build that session timeout module as well, which could benefit the whole Mendix community in terms of putting it onto the marketplace. So it's available. Go there and you can just download it, and you can just straight away set it up in 5 to 10 minutes time. But to answer that question, where if you want to have full control of a session of a group of users, then maybe you kind of have to first define. I mean, when you say group of users, it could be different user roles that you want. Some of them might need a bit longer timeout. Some of them it might need a bit less timeout. So that you can define in your microflow logic when you run. And there is a scheduled kind of event or scheduled microflow kind of a widget that is used in that session timeout module. You can customize that, change that to your needs, and basically what you could do is say that this set of user roles will have this kind of timeout session, and you can customize it based on your needs. So that's easily doable using that session timeout module.
Great. So that's all the time we have for today's session. I see there are more questions coming in. You can join us on the Mendix forum or the Mendix Community Slack and ask your questions there. We invite you to join and we can continue the conversation. Of course, we'll do a Maker Monday again soon. Yeah, join us live again to talk to Mendix experts. So I want to thank Iain, Mo, and Jakob for joining us today and sharing your expertise and your experience. I hope everyone will join us next time, and your questions are answered. And good luck building Mendix applications.
Thanks, Iain. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.